We're so averse to the idea that we could be wrong. It's weird to me that how many people are only skeptical of skeptical people. They don't have any skepticism they can aim at pharma or social media giants or corporate America. And the only thing they can be skeptical of is those weird people who are skeptical.
What's up, Captains? Today's episode is brought to you by my favorite omega-3 supplement, Lysi, specifically their Cod Liver Oil. Now, I wanted to talk about Lysi on today's show because it's relevant. And I believe that by taking a high quality cod liver oil like Lysi, it will do more for your immune system than getting a vaccine. Let me tell you why. Cod liver oil is chock full of high quality omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which work wonders for your immune system and not to mention just overall health. I call cod liver oil liquid health because it truly does help optimize every area of health, AKA brain function, heart health, joint health. It helps with sleep, like you name it. Lysi can help with that. It also helps with anxiety and depression. And there's studies to back this all up. This is not just me, spitting nonsense. And anybody who's wondering, I can send you these studies that I'm referring to. And not only that, not only the omega-3s, but it also contains vitamins A, E, and D. And vitamin D specifically, as I hope you've heard, is crucial to optimal immune function and is very beneficial at treating COVID-19 symptoms, specifically relating to this podcast. Omega-3 fatty acids are also one of the best things you can do for reducing inflammation. And as I hope you're aware, inflammation is the cause of all chronic diseases and illnesses. So by reducing your intake of omega-6 fatty acids and increasing your intake of omega-3 fatty acids, that can dramatically reduce inflammation. Now, granted, that is a very general overview of how that works, but I believe that almost everybody can benefit from a high quality fish oil supplement. And that's why I decided to have Lysi sponsor today's episode. And if you want the hookup on the best tasting fish oil that I have ever had, I just drink it straight out of the bottle. Watch, I'll show you guys. Just so you know, I'm not bluffing. I literally just drink it from the bottle. It tastes great. This is their mint and lemon flavor. They also have lemon. I like both. You can't go wrong with either one. But if you want the hookup on that, go to Lysi, lysi.us and use code TaylorM10 to save you some money. And the links to all this will be in the show notes, so check them out. All right, now on to today's episode with Christian Elliot. Hello, and welcome aboard another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. This is your captain speaking, Taylor Morgan. Today's episode, we have another special guest. His name is Christian Elliot. Christian is the CEO of True Whole Human, where he and his wife have helped thousands of people achieve their health and physique goals. Since 2005, Christian has also done over 15,000 hours of one-on-one coaching sessions with his clients. Christian also runs a popular blog titled Deconstructing Conventional, which has been featured on Men's Fitness, Huffington Post, CBS, and many other major media outlets. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, I figured let's start it off with a bang. There's something that I didn't include in the bio, and that's your viral article, 18 reasons why you will not be getting the COVID-19 vaccination.
Yep, that went viral beyond my wildest expectations and seems to not be slowing down at this point. So, it's been quite a wild ride, but I've got to meet a lot of really amazing people because of that article. So, happy to talk about that in as much detail as you want.
Yeah, so first because I heard you on another podcast saying that you were expecting some negative feedback, which of course you got some negative feedback, but you also got an overwhelming majority of positive feedback and people reaching out to you. You want to touch a little bit on that?
Oh man, did I ever. So I did that post just to kind of, in some ways, buy back my time and to just blend a voice. I felt like the conversation was so one-sided. And so I semi-reluctantly, like hit publish. I'm like, oh gosh, here it comes. Like I was just braced for the vitriol that I expected, that I see so much all over the news or what you expect on social media. And it was refreshingly the opposite. My inbox for over a month was just self-replicating. I could not keep up with the amount of people that are just reaching out to say thank you or to ask a thoughtful question. And the handful of trolls that I have had shown up in my inbox or that have come into my orbit is so far outweighed by the number of people who just said thank you. And I guess one thing it taught me was just how much people hunger for truth and for a level-headed, fair dialogue. Like it's apparently that's a rare thing. And I've always tried to take the position of just being as level-headed and fair as I can. Never the I know everything and you have to bend to my logic. It's just, so there's something about that tone I think that helped. But yeah, it's been so refreshing to meet so many amazing people who really just felt like they had a voice or somebody that they could ask a question to. And so I've had Snopes articles written about me, and I caught the attention of the fact checkers. I was kind of proud of myself that I made it that far, but
that means it's true.
Right. Exactly. If they're that busy that they're that aware of my post, then I must have said something that they didn't like. So yeah, it was it was obviously more of a reaction than I expected, but it was so great it really helped me see that, no, I know I need to be a steward of this. I need to do my best to help where I can and yet balance that out with the rest of the things I already have to do. So,
and were these a bunch of wackos and crazy conspiracy theorists that reach out to you saying thank you, or were there some, real people with real credentials?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a lot of, just your average Joe people. That's probably the majority of it. But my gosh, I have met some people that I look at the resumes. I'm like, this person's reaching out to me, like, whoa, and they're thanking me or patting me on the back or helping me handle some of the arguments that are inevitably going to come my way. And doctors and nurses and scientists that have come out of really have way more, dozens that have just taken the time to say, thank you for saying what I could not say, what I'm shackled from saying. And I appreciate the bravery. It didn't feel particularly brave for me. It just felt like something I needed to do. But I guess I'm in a semi-unique position that I've been a student of health for so long and have just developed a way of speaking. And my kids are homeschooled. I don't have a boss. I don't have somebody else that's going to hold it over me if I just try to express an opinion. And the number of amazing professionals who have stepped up and said, thank you, really was humbling. And it was exciting to see that kind of reaction.
Yeah. And speaking of people being too afraid, whether that's from losing their job, being publicly ostracized for speaking up about these things, especially doctors, somebody who's quite the opposite of that is Dr. Joe Mercola, one of the, I would say, the leading expert probably in coronavirus. He just came out with a book titled The Truth About Coronavirus, which is an Amazon bestseller. And that's better than New York Times bestseller, because to get on the New York Times bestseller list, that's pretty easy. But to get on the Amazon bestseller list, that means you're literally the best-selling book out of all of the books on Amazon. So that's a big deal. And why I wanted to bring this up and go into detail about the coronavirus, and not that this whole podcast is going to be about this, and the vaccines, is because Dr. Joe Mercola, I saw on Instagram today, is deleting all of his 25 years worth of research articles. And I saw that and I was just flabbergasted, because it's like the burning of the books back in, Nazi Germany. Like, clearly there's something bigger going on that we probably don't know about. There's something going on behind the scenes. But if somebody with the stature of Dr. Mercola is being censored, essentially forced, because there's no way he would do that unless something drastic was happening, then we need to speak up about this. And we need to make it clear that, what you hear on mainstream media is not the end all be all. Like, that is not like the correct, it's not necessarily facts. And not that we're necessarily right either, but I want there to be a discussion and not an argument or a debate. I want people to actually be able to talk to each other. And so I had a leadership coach on my podcast yesterday. And one of the things that he said about communication, which you're obviously well versed in, you got a degree in communication, was that one of the major problems that we're facing as a society is that there's too much arguing and communicating and not enough listening. So I asked him how important communication was. This was in regards to business. And then he responded with an answer about listening. Like, in order to be an effective communicator, you first have to listen. You have to understand the other person's point of view, what they're saying, where they're coming from, first to understand it yourself, and then for them to be even willing to want to listen to what you say. Right. So you have a degree in communication. How has that played a role in you being able to articulate what, like this article, for example?
Yeah, well, the communications degree, it's been a budding interest of mine, obviously, since college. I graduated college in '98. So that was, it's the ability to speak to the human heart and to speak to it in a way that resonates and that says, above all this noise, I actually heard that. And where I think it's, that skill set continued to get polished over the years. And one thing I learned is that if you want to have a business, but you don't know marketing, you won't have a business. If you want, so you don't have the option to not learn it if you want to run a business like I have. And so I had to get good at marketing. I had to get good at copywriting. I had to get good at saying, what makes the human pay attention? And so some of what may be the magic of the article, I still don't know all of it, but some of what may have helped that was just a copywriting skill set and ability to lay out story and to ask engaging questions and to try to be thoughtful and respectful. And to your point, to put myself in the shoes of other people and say, does this make sense? And to make it as much of a dialogue with thoughtful, hopefully semi-witty questions that make you go, okay, I could listen to this. I wouldn't mind talking about that. And to your point about Dr. Mercola, yet it is shocking that somebody with that reputation, who has been in the arena fighting and getting dirt kicked in his face for 25 years, is saying, I can't do this. I don't know if he's come under death threats of people and the people that work for him. I don't know what's happening, but I know that for a warrior like that, who has been the tip of the spear, he has been one of my early mentors. I was learning from him back in 2003 when I got started really getting into health. And to think that one of the giants of this is willfully taking down his entire website with all those articles. If we don't know how to have a dialogue, my gosh, I had a friend that I wrote an article. My most recent one was on that kind of the COVID wizards and my best guess at what's happening behind the scenes here. But what I started out that article with the story of a friend who we were back and forth dialoguing about what's going on. Like, does this make sense to you? And she was being more of the ilk that, nope, this is real. And you're crazy for not believing the mainstream narrative. And I was like, something's off. And the main thing I put my finger on was censorship. That something's off. If you cannot express an opinion and there's only one true narrative, something is wrong with that. And the way she bowed out was just said, censorship isn't my fight. Well, at some point, it's going to become all of our fight, because there will only be one story allowed. There currently is. They're so brash with their censorship and the breaking of the laws that undergird modern society. They're basically saying, stop us if you can. Good luck. And even a pillar, a giant like Joseph Mercola, doesn't have enough in the arsenal to fight that, or has to pivot in such a massive strategy. I don't believe that he is mailing in and stopping, or that he hasn't been very calculated in the way he will continue to fight. But it is definitely ought to be for anybody who has any natural health inclination, who doesn't just think we need to bow to pharma. At some point, you got to say, okay, this has crossed a line. I don't know what else needs to happen for people to say something really fishy is up. And at some point, you have to wake up and say, I'm the one that was duped, which is a very painful moment if you're not ready for that. But anyway, I could go on, but hopefully that answers your question about the communication and the censorship and Mercola and so on. So
yeah, no, definitely. And I think you're right. Part of the problem is that in order for people to, be open to a new point of view, they first have to admit that they were wrong,
or be open to the possibility that they might have been. Like, even if they're like, to hold two different competing ideas in your head and let them bounce around without being emotionally attached to one, and just say, maybe I'm not crazy if I entertain the other point of view, and just do a thought experiment. There's no penalty for that. You can just chase the rabbit and see where it goes. But we're so averse to the idea that we could be wrong. It's weird to me that how many people are only skeptical of skeptical people. They don't have any skepticism they can aim at pharma or social media giants or corporate America. And the only thing they can be skeptical of is those weird people who are skeptical. Like, I'm sorry for pointing out things that seem pretty obvious here, or really fishy things that aren't giant leaps of logic. This is just, we can see this happening. So anyway.
And that is the problem, that people are afraid to be asking questions. And if you do ask a question, it's like, well, how dare you even ask that? Like, right. The news is saying this. If the news says it, it's true. Like, and everybody always says, it's backed by the science. Like, we follow the science. Well, here's a quote from Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientists, mathematicians of all time. He said, and this was at the end of Dr. Mercola's video that he put out. This is a quote from Einstein. Science can flourish only in an atmosphere of free speech.
Nailed it.
So it's just mind-blowing to me that in America, where free speech has been one of the pillars of our nation since
the first pillar.
Yeah, exactly. That it's being censored. You can no longer ask a question. And this is the problem with everybody out there who is so dogmatic in their views. Veganism is a very popular example. I think vegans are very passionate about good things. They're well-intentioned. Absolutely. Animals, the environment, health, those are all fantastic things to be passionate about. But the problem, I think, with a lot of vegans is that they think that they're right and that there is no other way, because they saw a Netflix documentary, whatever it is, that they're not even open to the possibility of regenerative agriculture, that humans have been eating meat since they existed. It's just one way or you're wrong. And that's with anything, any topic, the left, the right, nobody's open to seeing other points of view.
Yeah, well, we've been groomed for how long you could debate that, but we've been groomed in a society where critical thinking isn't valued. It's not taught in schools. We are taught to be compliant. We are taught that there's one way of seeing things, and the idea that we're going to grow a society of people who are fair and level-headed and think critically and actually, the most opposite of the definition of science is to say science is settled. That's the most unscientific thing you could say. Science, by definition, isn't settled. It's
all about trying to prove you wrong.
Right. You're supposed to constantly be challenging it, not just whatever you say, Lord Fauci. Like, it's anathema to me that people don't see how much science has been bastardized by people who are claiming to be scientific and yet don't actually show you the science that they claim to be, or that they don't so manipulate it to get a headline or a snippet and say, here's what it says. But if you actually go read the whole thing, like,
that's another problem.
Did people you not read the what headline. It said? Like the actual science, the whole thing,
who's it funded by, and all of it.
I can't have skepticism, because then I would have to swallow the idea that I was part of the duped masses, and that's really uncomfortable. I'd rather not feel that way. So I'm just going to go rip you a new one on Facebook. I'm going to go, and we don't have it's so rarely modeled, the idea to say, okay, please make your point, and to concede one once in a while. I go, that's a fair point. I hadn't thought of that. Like, where do you see that happening? I would love to see Fauci on a debate someone. He would look so ridiculous trying to actually debate the scientists who are qualified to make statements about COVID. He won't do it. Not a chance in the world. He doesn't have to do it, because the people that are puppeting this narrative have the microphone. So until we shift away from that, until we reallocate money, until we just stop paying attention, and turn off social media or migrate to platforms that don't censor us. We can't just shake our fists and be mad that it's not getting better. We have to actually take action. And that's the part that's different.
I think that there is a civil war on the horizon. As I mentioned before we started recording, I posted this on my Instagram story today. I hope to God that there's not, because for those of you who don't know, and I personally do not know, but I've heard many stories. I was in the Marine Corps, and I listened to a lot of, podcasts, Jocko Willink and Tim Kennedy about war. War is horrific. It's bad. Nobody should want to go to war. War is like horrible for mankind. It's awful. But there comes a time to where, because there's no dialogue, there's no real communication happening. It's this or you're wrong. And then, people speak up. And I think that has been happening for a while now. And then seeing this from Mercola, it's just, I don't know. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. Again, I hope it doesn't, but I am ready for it if it does. But we don't have to go down that whole rabbit hole. I think you bring up a good point about schools not teaching creative thinking. They don't teach you necessarily like different ways to solve a problem. They just want you to know this is the answer, and you memorize that, and that's what's going to get you good grades on the test. And then good grades get rewarded, as opposed to trying hard. Have you read the book Growth Mindset? Or what is it? Yeah, Mindset by Carol Dweck.
By Carol Dweck. Yeah, no, I have read that. Yep.
Yeah, I've read that I think 3 times. I think that book is the first book that everybody should read, because you have to understand that concept, that it's not like getting an A is neither good or bad. One of my favorite quotes from Shakespeare is, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So if you have 2 kids in school, one kid is just naturally super smart, gets A's in all the classes. The other kid is getting C's and D's. The kid with the A's isn't trying at all. He's not being challenged whatsoever. He's just memorizing everything done. The kid who's getting the C's and D's is trying his ass off. He's trying to think of creative ways to solve the problem, whatever. He gets C's and D's, and he's punished for giving his best effort. That is wrong. So talk to us a little bit about, first, why you chose to homeschool your kids and how you see that paying off in the future.
Oh man, so many different ways I could answer that. I think the part of what clicked for us, we decided from the beginning. So my oldest is 14 now, so we've been at this since she started school, and we just took it a year at a time. But so much of what we were looking at was the education system of what she would be taught, the environment that she would be in, perhaps if we needed to make exemptions for vaccines, to not have that sometimes, just the number of fights that we feel like we would have to take on, and the limitations of what they actually learn. And as we look at our duty as parents as kind of a sacred duty, like it's our job to shepherd these children to become competent adults. And there are so many important life lessons that kids are robbed of in a public school system, from lessons about education, or about finance and spirituality and basic relational skills and business skills and critical thinking and questioning the authority, just the basic things that would make you a competent human. It's so limited in the actual most important life skills. And we didn't want to give our kids an experience where that wasn't part of it. So as homeschool parents, we have the opportunity to give them courses in business and in finance and relationship and in health and in so many of their particular interests. That we don't have to wait for the slowest kid in the class for that's the pace that the whole class gets to go at. And we get through our days faster. We have the option to take them and to travel and to see other parts of the world and make getaways, field trips, and to enrich their education, but to also have them as part of co-ops and to put them in there's homeschool sports leagues. And there's value in children, I think, interacting with different age groups, because they get to relate to people older and younger. And it's not just one group of the same people, and to take children. There's a great movie called Inside Out. It's a cartoon, but it's a fantastic look at the developmental phases kids go through. And to think that they have the emotional maturity to be constantly amongst their peers, and not feel insecure and not have all sorts of other issues pop up. We just got to skip that. So much of our lifestyle that we've chosen is just kind of opting out of systems that we thought we could do better. That healthcare was one of them. We have an insurance that's just a different form of insurance. So it's just people that pay each other's bills. It's we have homeschooling that we opted. I chose to start and run a business. I'm opted out of so many of the systems that can easily put their talons in you and give you different unwanted experiences, I guess you could have, and to more thoughtfully curate what would be a life that we would actually want. What would be, you swallow hard if you decide to homeschool. There's trade-offs. It's work. It's not as just smooth sailing. But my gosh, if I were to, I can't create an alternate universe and go back and do that and homeschool, so I can't compare them with our own kids. But I would imagine, if I could, the volume of stress and drama that we have not had to deal with is so much less in the homeschool route, because I don't have that teacher I have to go have a really hard comment. I don't have a PTA board meeting. I don't have all of the other bullying and drama that could have been part of it. And I can put them in whatever sport. I can put them in so many other things and shepherd their experience and protect their heart and give them the gift of an extended childhood. And to us, that was just, I want to be a family. I want to be part of these kids' lives. I don't want them to grow up and be like, I kind of saw my dad here and there. No, we got to do it with him. So anyway, I love that topic and can talk about it quite a bit, but that's some of what went through our heads 15 years ago.
Yeah. You mentioned one of the reasons was essentially freedom to choose, which is so powerful. That's, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, that's man's greatest superpower is the freedom to choose.
Exactly.
And he was talking about it, choose your response, because in the Nazi death camps, you have nothing. All you have is your freedom to choose how you respond to situations. But you mentioned one of the things was freedom to not have your kids be mandatorily vaccinated. What is your major reason for not wanting your kids or yourself to be vaccinated?
Well, if we're talking vaccines in general or COVID vaccine, there's so many more reasons for the COVID vaccine. But the vaccine industry in general, it smells really funny to me. No liability whatsoever for any product. That's the only product on the market. You can sue pharma for anything except their vaccines. They're actually technically classified as biologics, which is the same thing as supplements, which is interesting way they're classified. But in terms of vaccines, the things that give me the most pause are the ingredient lists and the very short-term safety studies. Like there's vaccines in the market where nobody died literally 4 days after we gave a shot. It must be safe. Ship it, right? 4 days, 5 days. You if you have any reservation about a vaccine, pull out the insert that comes with it. The COVID vaccines, we don't have them yet, but all the other ones, pull out the insert and just look at the list of possible health complications you could have from that. And then if you get a look at the ingredients and that, okay, wait, they put mercury in this, or some of them, they're starting to take that out because mercury kind of got a bad rap. Maybe we shouldn't do that. So they started putting aluminum in there, or formaldehyde, all sorts of different foreign animal proteins, or glyphosate, or on and on through this list of like, why in the world would we go straight to the most toxic end of the periodic table and inject that in us in an attempt to get healthier? Like, I couldn't get my head around that. It's like, if I went to go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, I'm thinking about injecting myself with a virus, weakened, alive, whatever. And then I'm going to put some mercury, formaldehyde, aluminum, glyphosate, polysorbate 80, a few other things, just kind of stick it in there and hope that helps. Like, you'd be like, what are you doing? Playing roulette with your life? But because we call it a vaccine, suddenly, okay, it's safe. It was made by angels. Like, you can't sue them if anything happens to you, but you just have to trust it. So I'm like, something just feels off about that. And then if you look at the rapid increase of problems that are happening in children, or the huge rise in autism from 1776 on, it is exponential growth. Now, am I saying that only came from that, or that's something? I don't necessarily know that, but golly, it sort of is correlated. If you look at the timeline of when they were released, I think there are other factors complicating that, like glyphosate sprayed, Roundup sprayed in the tune of billions of pounds all over the planet. It's water soluble. It's in every raindrop and in the ocean. Like, we can't get away from this. Like, there are plenty of other toxic parts to this equation, but to knowingly inject my kids with things that have been demonstrated to be not so great, the CDC was taken to court over the claim on their website that says vaccines do not cause autism. They were said, will you please produce the studies that you rely upon to say that, to make this statement that they don't cause autism? Guess how many studies they came up with that actually answered that question? The number is 0. Our own CDC cannot produce any document to back up the claim that vaccines do not cause autism in the vaccines they give in the first 6 months of life. They have no studies on that, not one. Knowing that, does that not make, can we at least not be a little skeptical or just pump the brakes and say, can we look at this a little closer?
Just ask a question.
Right. The other thing that is so convincing to me, at least, is the complete absence of any study of vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. The CDC refuses to do that study. There have been several smaller groups that have actually spent the money and done the studies and put thousands of kids in different camps and said, these kids don't have the vaccine, these kids do. And then they compare overall health outcomes, not necessarily does this produce antibodies and protect it at particular ages until the thing runs out and you need a booster. But do the people who get vaccinated, do they live healthier lives overall? Do they have less health conditions? Overwhelmingly, the answer to that is no, they don't. Unvaccinated children demonstrate a much more long-term, robust health than kids who are vaccinated. That was pretty convincing to me, and it's replicated over multiple different studies. So those are some of the things that stood out to me from vaccines in general. Then we got to COVID, and I'm like, I already don't trust you, and now you're going to rush this? We're going to do it before we're done with safety trials. We're going to use a technology we've never used that for 20 years we were trying to use, and it killed everything or injured things that we were testing it on. Wink, wink, it's safe now. By the way, we just sent through the PrEP Act to reinforce the fact that we really don't have liability here. Trust us. No, I can't get behind that. It just, everything about it. I've been skeptical of pharma since basically 2003 when I had to get my health back. Like, that whole industry, it smacks to me of avarice, of just seething amounts of greed, and doesn't really matter who we step on, but we're just so caught up in it that we have to keep it going, because if we expose what it's doing, anyway, I can riff about this one for a while. So you may want to stop me, but
okay. So you mentioned how they can cause autism in kids, and also autoimmune disease. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the vaccines bypass your, I forget what it is, your innate immune system, I believe. And so if that gets
mediated immunity, they bypass that. They're going straight for humoral immunity, which means memory immunity.
Yeah,
it's an attempt to skip it.
If that gets bypassed, then your immune system's not going to, get stronger.
Right. Yeah. I can get into how that works if you want me to, but you tell me what questions you want to talk about.
I think that's probably a little bit too in depth for this podcast, but if you're listening, you would like to know more about that, reach out. I'm sure you'd be happy to answer those questions. I can point you to
resources where you can learn this stuff if you want. But
yeah, my biggest reason for not getting vaccines in general, not just the COVID vaccine, is that I know, because I'm a fan of holistic health and I know that it works, is that my immune system, if treated properly, no healthy person has ever or will ever die from any sort of chronic disease or illness. I believe that. I don't believe that any healthy person, and truly healthy, not just, Western medicine's definition, the absence of illness.
Right.
I believe that, true health is optimizing your sleep, eating food that is right for you specifically, connecting with nature, drinking clean water, playing, having fun, having good relationships, all that stuff, blocking EMFs, everything goes into real health. I don't think any healthy person has ever or will ever die from any chronic disease, illness, virus, because your immune system can handle it. If you expose yourself to germs and dirt and don't use hand sanitizer all the time and wash your hands every 2 seconds and, disinfect everything with bleach, your body is supposed to be fighting and attacking all of the things that are around us all the time.
Yeah.
But if you're blocking that with artificial substances, never really get a chance to, and then you get sick.
Yeah, there's so many different directions I could go with that one.
Okay, we'll switch topics. I don't want this podcast to be all about that, but I feel like this was definitely worth mentioning. Speaking of holistic health, I know you're a big fan of chiropractors, as am I. And of course, just like not all doctors are, bad people prescribing medications or whatever, not all chiropractors are good. There's for sure some bad chiropractors. That's the reason why in general it's gotten a bad rap. But how have chiropractors made an impact in your life when you were sick?
Oh, it's significantly. Like I didn't have it in my orbit. My dad went to a chiropractor when he hurt his back, and that was pretty much like, okay, chiropractor back. That was the extent of my association with it. And my health was definitely not great shortly after I got married, and kind of leading up to that for a couple of years. And somehow I convinced this wonderful woman to marry me. Anyway, but one of her bridesmaids went to the chiropractor that was local for carpal tunnel syndrome. And I'm like, what? Like they work on the wrists too? Like, okay, it just kind of, okay, maybe they can help me. So my joints were not great. And so I just went, and they blew my mind. I had been to half dozen or so medical doctors trying to figure out, why is my immune system garbage? And why are my joints hurting and not getting better? And I feel like I got like somebody stabbing a butter knife between my shoulder blades here. And so they more or less just took my paradigm of health and turned it upside down. The basic thing we tend to grow up with in the society is like, trust your doctor, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but there isn't ever a question of the system that they are groomed in to get to the point where they're dispensing information or pills. And when you come across somebody that radically alters your health and puts you on a new trajectory of life, which is really what happened to me. I wasn't looking to become a health guru. I just graduated from college and seminary. I've got this pastor's heart behind trying to help people. And yet I had this pivot moment of, I need to get my health back in order. And by golly, I can communicate. I understand health. I have a story now, and it slowly just became a hobby and eventually turned into a business where I just love helping people solve complicated problems and get above the pill for every ill. And so much of, to your point, so much of the alternative world is still symptom management. You have this symptom, take this supplement instead of this drug. You have this pain, do this particular restorative discipline, and that should do this corrective exercise. And it's still find the symptom, treat the symptom. We just call it alternative and natural. And we're like, no, we're not reactive, we're proactive. But no, we're pretty much.
I have a problem with it being called alternative because that's the way things have been done since, humans have existed. Like there's a reason why all these things like work, and because that's how different tribes and different civilizations have been treating people. There were no, artificial substances, any chemically or lab made pills or prescriptions back then. Like you had to understand how to treat your body holistically through what the earth has to offer. And so now that it's being called alternative medicine, it seems kind of like wacko. Like, why would you go against Western medicine?
Yeah, that's a very intentional label. And I sometimes rejected it. The challenge is finding a better one. But the history of it goes back to the Flexner Report, 1910, when the Carnegies and Rockefellers said, we're going to establish Western medicine. We're going to make our own way, and we're going to forge it with chemicals, and threw a bunch of money at basically forcing out every other type of, there were so many competing different ways to approach our health then. And they all got pushed out in favor of the one way that we could say was scientific. We're going to base ours on science, and science became this God, this altar we worship at, rather than, whatever else we might think is worth of our time or worship. And so science became it. And now we have this pill for every ill. We have this germ theory that just needs to die a death and go the way of the dodo bird. And just, we're going to look back on it 50 years and stuff like, what were we thinking? And it's so much of, we're above that now. Like, yeah, we're not. We're just as human as any other human in history. And it's unfortunate that we have we've poo-pooed other things to say, because if I'm conventional, then you're weird. Yeah. Well, whatever is conventional, that's part of why I named my blog what I did. Whatever's conventional used to be unconventional. It somehow rose to be the dominant way. And if we don't examine that, and it's like, did we make some wrong turns here? Could we have done this a little bit better? And back to your earlier comment, can we just question some of the stuff? Like, I'm not trying to insult you by asking a question. I'm just curious. Like, for whatever reason, I have an insatiably curious mind, and I constantly go, wait, why? I have this cerebralness to how I process information that sometimes is annoying, and then the volume of questions I'll ask. But I like complicated. Like, I can handle it. Bring it on. And yes, there are definitely amazing alternative ways, chiropractors being one of them, that can blow your mind with the information they can extract from the body without hurting it, and use that amazing information to shepherd you toward better health. And then you don't have to just go treat symptoms with supplements or corrective exercises. You can actually just build a lifestyle that builds health, and it undergirds a well-lived life. So
speaking of lifestyle, talk to us a little bit about the difference between just living an active lifestyle and thinking that you have to exercise for an hour every single day.
Yeah. There's a big difference between exercise and movement. And,
yes.
and once that paradigm sinks in, that everything you do, from how you move your hand to brush your teeth and the same way you always do the repetitive tasks of your life, that has a movement profile. It has a limitation on what movements you ask your body to do. But when you start thinking about the whole ecology of the way you move, every different part of your movement, and you contrast that with exercise. Exercise is often this fixed thing that you do. You go to this room with four walls where you move heavy things around and you grunt and you do repetitive motions, and then you go back to living, which it seems funny to think of it that way, but that's what we've so moved our lives toward being sedentary. And every basic need that we have, we can just push a button now. We don't have to actually worry about doing the thing to meet our basic needs. And so we've slowly moved movement out of our lives. And then we have to go to these weird places and move heavy things and grunt and be a little self-conscious doing exercise because we're supposed to. And we forget that movement's what's fun. Like, go out and play a sport, go throw a Frisbee, go climb a hill, something, just move. And if you can get back to having fun and you start to experience, oh, this is what it feels like to feel alive in my own body. I haven't felt this rush of, I left it all in the field today. I actually wore myself out in the garden, or mowing the yard, or just wrestling with nature in some way, having fun in a random body of water and just playing. When you can disassociate exercise from duty. There's a place for exercise. It can discipline you and teach you things and give you a focus and help you nail down, okay, where am I a little bit off? Where am I moving so robotically? And where have I jettisoned the need to move, or the opportunity, or the options that play from this thing called movement? And how do I bring a little more of that into my exercise time so I have fun doing it? And when you can start to think in categories of movement and enrichment and everything, you have to move as much as you have to breathe. If you're not moving, you're dead. Movement is as essential to our existence as food, air, and water. So if that's part of it, well, darn it, I might as well try to find a fun way to do it. So.
Yeah. And most of my audience does not want to be a competitive bodybuilder, in which case you do not have to spend an hour, certainly not more than an hour, in this box with four walls with cleaning chemicals and being blasted with Wi-Fi for an hour a day.
And crummy music.
Yeah. You don't have to do that. For the majority of people listening, you probably just want to feel good, look good naked, right? That's what most people want, just to be confident in their body, to feel good, to be able to play with their kids, just live life. You don't have to be spending hours in the gym. You don't have to, feel like you have to go exercise. Like, if you're that type of person to where you struggle to work out, switch your mentality. Like you were saying, instead of thinking of that as like a duty or a burden, just go do whatever activity you want to do. Gardening, go for a walk, swim, paddleboard, like bike, whatever is in your area. Like just get outside.
Yeah, well, it's beyond just compartmentalizing. Okay, I'm gonna have, this is my movement time and this is my work time. Where can I overlap the two? Part of the lifestyle choice we made of running our own business is I want to have the option to move more as part of what I do for a living. I have to obviously be online a lot just to work and coach and so on. And so I made the choice to get a floor desk instead of just sitting fixed in a chair all the time. I have a desk that's basically a glorified coffee table that I'm constantly moving and shifting, but it's giving my hips movements that it would otherwise never get. And sometimes put the computer on the floor. And if you just, I try to get in as many different positions as I can throughout the day. Sitting all day in one position isn't really that much better than standing in one position all day. But if we can move more to meet our basic needs, if we can not outsource fetching the remote to the children and actually go get up and do it, get that thing out of the bottom cupboard yourself and not be so intimidated by getting up and down off the floor. But we just start to curate a life and a lifestyle where it forces you to move to meet some basic needs. Once that paradigm opens, you turn around in your car rather than look at the camera that backs up. Like, it's just basic things that we can do that reclaim some of the movement we would otherwise skip.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I always say movement should be your default state. Like, most people's default state is they wake up in the morning, they sit in the car, drive to work, sit behind a desk at a computer for 8 hours a day, come back home, lay in the couch.
Sit on a spin bike.
Yeah, right. Like, your
position.
default state should be moving. I love that you have a desk on the floor. I have a standing desk, but as you can see in the video, like, I'm constantly shifting, I'm constantly moving. Once we get done, I'm going to go move around. Like, sitting is not great. Standing all day is not great. It's the constant shifting and moving that is the best. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So people wonder why they get to be 35 plus and they're so stiff and they can't do the things that they used to anymore. And they just blame it on old age. It's not old age. It's because you stopped moving your body in those positions.
Yeah. As we age, a few different, Katie Bowman's been a big one. There's been a few different people who have really broadened my perspective on movement. But from birth to early childhood, if you watch kids from 5 years old and younger,
perfect squats.
It's perfect squats, but like, they're doing flips and they're bouncing off of things and they're climbing and they're getting into all sorts of positions that adults are like, that's awkward. But they do it to experience what does it feel like, and their movement profile, the volume of things they do in any given day is so vast, and then we slowly shrink that over time to just not very many motions. We walk and we go to the chair and we go to the spin bike and we push the button on the coffee grinder rather than grinding it or other arm. Like, there's so many different ways that we slowly move, and if we're not using the 600 plus muscles we have in a coordinated symphony, some of them atrophy. The ones that have to do the same repetitive things stay strong enough. And then when we go to reach for that thing, oh, it hurt my back. Well, you didn't have to, but you just slowly stopped using so many different movements. So can you hang on monkey bars for a few seconds? Can you get into so many can you climb a retaining wall and just try to balance on? Like, look for those things and you'll find them. And you push way into the future that inevitable, like, none of us are going to cheat death here, but we certainly don't have to go to the grave crotchety and creaky and limp to the finish line. We can go with our wits about us and have left it all on the field and not been in tremendous pain on the way out.
Exactly. So I coach entrepreneurs, and they're, notoriously busy working on their business. And One of the excuses I hear a lot, not just for fitness, but for almost everything, is I don't have time. Hate to break it to you, but everybody in the world has the same 24 hours. Mm-hmm. It's what you choose to prioritize that you spend your time on. Mm-hmm. But as we just mentioned, you don't have to dedicate an hour every single day to working out. You can just move throughout your workday. Like, I have a door frame pull-up bar that I can hang up here. You can do squats, things that require no equipment, just, different ranges of motion. So now let's get into self-limiting beliefs. I don't have time being one of them. Mm-hmm. What are some of the most popular self-limiting beliefs that you hear from your clients, and how do you bust those?
Yeah, I mean, the way I usually look for them is anytime somebody makes what I call an absolute statement. Any of my clients will tell you, like, bust. Like, they'll catch themselves because they know if they're going to say it, I'm going to bust them. So they might as well bust themselves. But an absolute statement is, I can't, I won't, I don't, I always, I never, it is always. It's just something black and white, no room for change. And anytime they catch it, I'm like, okay, so guess we have nowhere to go with that. Like, once you get that, I'm too busy. Well, I guess we should, why are we talking then? Mm-hmm. If you're, to your point, we all have the same 24 hours, and it's what you do with them, and it's the ways you optimize them. That popular saying, work smarter, not harder. To me, sometimes I feel so trite. Well, like, how do I figure out how to work smarter? I have to get to the limits of hard work. I have to get to figure out what doesn't work so well. And you don't try that, or you don't learn that without trying some things and finding out what the real limits are. And by pushing yourself to get better somewhere, you have an opportunity to optimize. So some of it, I think, is just the will to try to push to find out what you're capable of, and to figure out how to optimize it. That, to me, the layer that a lot of clients seem to appreciate with coaching is that what we really focus on is whole life success. What is it? If you're going to look back and not have the top 5 regrets of the dying, or look back and be like, crap, like I was super successful at work, but my kids hate me and I left early because I couldn't take care of my health, and I don't even have much to leave behind. Like if we're myopically successful as entrepreneurs and we run our engine hard and chasing the almighty dollar, and there is always a reason to justify continuing to work. Work never finishes. You may have noticed this. We don't get done. It's always
emails
there.
Keep coming.
Right. Especially if you write viral blog posts. And if you want to live, you will, no one so far has ever disputed this with me. If you want to be successful, or if you want to feel successful, you won't if you're really hot, work out all the time, and you have no money, or you have a lot of friends, but you're broke, or whatever way you want to arrange. There are certain meaningful aspects of life, from relationships to career and so on, that we have to have multifaceted success in order to feel successful. Otherwise, we can make all the money in the world and it will feel empty. And the recognition that we are limited, that we can't run after everything, and that's silly, you can have it all, and the frame of reference for the extreme stories that we see of it was possible. He went from 0 to 100,000 or 1 million and whatever. Yeah, but at what cost did that person do that? What did they trade? What are they about to end up on the tabloids because, wow, they're so successful and their relationships fell apart?
Speaking of that, you mentioned the top 5 deathbed regrets. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and go into those, because this is powerful.
Okay. Now you're putting me on the spot to recall all of that.
No worries. I can grab them. I've mentioned this on a few podcasts, but if you stumble, I can save you.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea that I didn't live a life true to myself, and I followed other people's, what they wanted for me was one of them. The idea that I wish I would have invested in friendships more and not let them get away. Remind me some of the other ones, because I'll take a little bit longer if you don't.
Yeah. So the number one that came from every single person that this woman interviewed was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Mm-hmm. So I think you already mentioned that. Number 2, which you had already mentioned, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Mm-hmm. And I think the most powerful one is that I wish I had let myself be happier. Mm-hmm. Now, the phrasing there is important.
Yeah.
Let myself be happier.
Right. Happiness isn't something you can experience in the future. You get it now or you don't have it. Like there's no way to delay it. You choose that by the attitude that you bring to the moment, by the perspective, when your kids run in the room and interrupt you. That's life. They're being kids. We can't be mad at them for being kids. Like there's some level at which, if you can't find joy right now, what in the world are you doing? What is so important that's just robbing it from you? And is that trade-off worth it? And if we don't have a sober evaluation of the values that we have and the life that we actually want, and why this will be worth, I have a client right now, I was just coaching her today, and she's telling me about the amount of work her and her husband do, the number of hours they put in. And I'm like, is there an amazing golden ticket at the end of all this hard? Like, where is all this going?
Is it worth it?
And yeah. And it's the showstopper question. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. It makes sense to work this hard because we can, but so many people, they get to like time off. Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, it's that when you're a kid, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And it's that back, like we're so bad at planning our time off and protecting it and accepting and realizing that when you're resting, you're not doing nothing. You're gathering strength. You're replenishing so you can actually go back into the fight and be effective. And if you say you don't have time, shame on you. Like, find it. You're a freaking entrepreneur. How in the world are you going to find it? If you can solve these business problems and you can't get out of your own way, pump the brakes a little bit. Yes, there are seasons when we have to sprint. We got to bust our butt and hustle. And I get it. I'm right there with you. And I have seasons like that myself. But if all of life is like that for 10 years or 20 years, or step back and look at what you're giving up to do that. Yeah. That's part of why we chose to homeschool. I don't want to be separated from my kids all the time. I mean, I'm in this to win it. And the recognition, like, I don't need to be a billionaire. I'll make a good, comfortable living that gives my family the time to be family together. And that's good enough. And that may not be good enough for everyone, but that's a philosophy I came to. I can always work more, but I can't get these years back. And darn it, I'm not going to miss them.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really good point, and we'll probably end it on this. Is essentially what you said is, happiness comes from living in the moment, from being present, and you can reduce or eliminate most of your stress and anxiety simply by just being present and living in the moment, because anxiety comes from either, reminiscing on what happened in the past or worrying about what could potentially happen in the future. But if nothing bad is happening in this very moment, you can relieve all that. Now, it's not just a simple switch. It's not, that easy. But once you can learn to do that, you do get happier. Stress does start to go away. So what are some of the strategies that you teach your clients on how to achieve that?
Yeah, it's one of the main things. It sounds funny or simple, but I describe it as a play deficiency. If you have a play deficiency, I see movement and air and water and food as legitimate biological needs. I see play as another one. If you don't play, you will be a grumpy mess and no one will want to be your friend. And so play, what does that mean for you as an entrepreneur? For me, I can tell you what it means for me, and it sounds silly, but I have a little game I play on my phone that's just completely, it's a fun strategy game. There's some smack talk back and forth. It's just no contribution to the larger society. I typically check out the Dallas Cowboys website, and just, it's America's team. I feel like a patriot reading that. And that I've learned that I can't not play at least a little bit every day. So I got to pick things that are not self-sabotaging, that don't make me stay up late, that rob me of a reasonable bedtime or keep me from waking up on time, or that distract me and like, oh yeah, I didn't see my kids at all today. But I've learned, for me, it's about a half an hour worth of shut the door on the world and just do something that's fun. And so you find what it is for you that meets that need. And then they're really trying to ferociously protect one day off a week where I parent my phone. I put that thing somewhere else. I don't take it with me. I don't need to know what's going on with the phone all of the time. And to just divorce myself from technology and gather strength. And to your point, enjoy a moment. Like, I can be happy. There's so many things to be grateful for. And turn off the stupid news. Like, you don't need to know that it's going to keep coming too. And it's only designed to make you aggravated so that you'll keep paying attention. Well, stop it. And if you can check out and turn it off and protect your mind share, what actually crosses your consciousness, that's a big part of being happy, because social media and media is just intentionally trying to work you up into a lather. Don't give it that option. And you will find it so much easier to be present and to be at your best and to be loving to your family, and find a way to wedge yourself into your own schedule if you have time to think, and don't be intimidated by white space and solitude. You need it, and stop being scared of it. Don't just get jumpy leg, like, I got to get back. I don't know what to do with myself, so I got to start working again. Stop. Spend time with yourself and just think, and your heart will be like, can I say something now? And when it does, listen, and it will tell you where to direct your focus and what's important and what's being neglected. And you can, if you carve that out and protect it, you can find a way to be happy throughout this wild journey of life and this crazy, stupid era of COVID that we're living through.
Wow. Well, I think we should end it there, because I'm not sure if there's going to be anything better that we could say than that. That was pretty powerful stuff. So, Christian, where can people find out more about you and your coaching?
You can go to our website. It is truewholehuman.com. You can learn more about what we do there. You can take a quiz we put together to help you understand kind of the way you're wired. You can also check out my blog that you mentioned. It's deconstructingconventional.com. You can go back, and those two link to each other. So those are the two places to find me. You can sign up for our mailing list at the bottom of the blog if you want to, or you take our quiz, and you could just email me and reach out, Christian@truewholehuman.com.
And you have a brick and mortar location, correct?
We do not. We used to have. For 9 years, we had brick and mortar location, and we transitioned to virtual a little over 4 years ago. We've been exclusively coaching in the virtual realm.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. Well, Christian, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and spreading your wisdom, and for having the courage to ask questions.